Believe in yourself and go for it, because life is short and you only get one stab at it. So just go for it. Don't let anything or anyone hold you back.
Welcome back to another episode of the Directors Club podcast, brought to you by Cumbria Chamber of Commerce. In this series, we get to explore some of the most interesting characters, directors and leaders from Cumbria, and on occasion, beyond. The Directors Club is kindly sponsored by Rachel Bell Wealth Management and Muckle LLP. Today, I'm here with Denise, who is the owner and founder of Razzamataz Theatre Schools. Now, many of you will have seen Razzamataz, maybe you send your children to Razzamataz, but this is a really interesting conversation and Denise is absolutely hilarious. If you don't follow her on LinkedIn, then please do. She is still capable of doing the splits and will often do it when she wins one of her many awards. I love this interview and I can't wait for you to hear it. Hi Denise, thanks for joining me.
Hi Eve, thanks for inviting me on.
No problem. Can you start by telling me a bit about your background? Where are you from?
So I'm from a wee town called Renfrew, which is near Glasgow. And if you've ever flown from Glasgow Airport, you probably actually drove through Renfrew and not even realised it's where Glasgow Airport is. And I was brought up there. There was family of 6. I was the youngest of 4 children, and we were in a 2-bedroom council flat there. We always joked that my bedroom until I was 10 was an airing cupboard. And in fact, it was an airing cupboard that I shared with my sister. So it wasn't even exclusively mine. I think my dad had taken the door off the hinges so you could just about get bunk beds in, but I didn't have any. I don't remember having a wardrobe or drawer. Like, that was, even having a wardrobe for my clothes was a luxury. I didn't have that. But looking back, and I realise now I had quite a poor upbringing, but I didn't realise it at the time because we had a happy upbringing. You know, it was crazy. It was busy, and we didn't have much money, and there wasn't any space in this wee 2-bedroom flat. But yeah, it was fun. It was happy.
Good. Well, it is interesting, isn't it, that when you're young, you don't actually realise what's happening. It's when you look back when you're a bit older. So which school did you go to? Did you go to a local school, or did you go off to boarding school or anything unusual like that?
Oh, crumbs, no. That's boarding school definitely for only rich people. Well, where I'm from in Glasgow, and bearing in mind I'm nearly 50, so it was very much sort of in the days of the Catholic and Protestant. So you went to a school based on your religion. So I went to St James's Primary. I was brought up a Catholic, and did obviously my primary school in there. And then I went to, again, the Catholic high school, because that's how it worked in Scotland, certainly back then, called Trinity High. I can't say I loved school. I went because you had to go. I did go through a period in high school where I was sort of bullied a little bit, more mentally, not physically. And I think it was when I actually started dancing, and I started sort of, I guess, being a little bit different. And I had appeared on a TV programme called Saturday Superstore, Search for a Superstar, way back. And yeah, I found myself being a bit isolated, to be honest. I lived for dance, and my dance friends are still my friends today. But yeah, I felt a bit quite lonely at high school, to be honest. I did really well at high school. I could have went on to university, but I didn't want to. I'm very much a creative person, so the thought of sort of sitting at a desk for another 5 years didn't really appeal to me that much. But yeah, that's where I was schooled, in Renfrew.
Where did this love of dance start? Can you remember when you started dancing?
I mean, I was always crazy. I was always jumping off my mum's sofa, and like Fame was my favourite TV programme. So I guess you've got it in you, but I didn't start dancing until I was about 10, because again, my mum and dad didn't have any money. But as I was, growing up, then my siblings were growing up and they were getting jobs and what we call it in Scotland is dig money. So they were helping my mum out with dig money. So then I guess I could afford to go to dance classes. I did go when I was about 8, I think, and I didn't really enjoy it because I was terrified that I didn't know the routines. I was actually quite shy. I had quite low self-esteem, and I just thought that I was just going to be laughed at if I did it. So I left. My nerves got the better of me and I left. And then my mum seen an advert in the local newspaper, the Renfrewshire World, which was the free newspaper you used to get, looking for raw talent in Paisley. So I went along, and the only reason I actually went along, I've always loved fitness. I was in the relay team, the hockey team, the netball team. And actually the teachers had went on strike that year. So all the hockey teams that were always on a Saturday was cancelled. So that's the only reason I went along, because I actually loved my hockey and I wasn't prepared to give it up. But I went along and I got into this dance team. And honestly, the rest is history, because there was wild horses couldn't have, stopped me going to dance. Once I got there, I just loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And I found something that somebody told me I was good at. So that in itself gave me so much self-confidence that, oh my God, they're saying that I'm quite good at this. And yeah, I think I am quite good at it. And yeah, there was no turning back from there. And as I say, those dance friends are still my friends today. Made lifelong friends at that dance school.
What was the difference between the dance school at 8 years old, where the nerves got the better of you, to this one that you went to at 10 years old?
I think it was the first one I went to was very, very strict. Actually, that's why I never wanted a dance school, because I don't believe in exams. I'm not a big fan of children having to do exams and getting judged on this one particular paper. So I do remember that school was very strict, whereas this one, it was all about freestyle. It was all about expressing yourself. And that just sort of gave me the buzz. And I also did gymnastics from there as well, which I absolutely adored. So I think that was the difference. It wasn't so sort of regimented.
So from there, wild horses couldn't get you away from dancing, and you loved dancing, and that's at 10 years old. When did you leave school, and what was your first job after school?
I left school. Now you're having me to clock back a few years now. I think I left school. I must have been 16. I stayed on to do. I got about eight or 9 O levels and 5 hires, because it's a different sort of system in Scotland. And I left school at 16 after doing 6 year, and I went to Reed Care College. I think that was my first step to do business studies, actually. And I was with this dance school. We were doing sort of part-time, semi-professional, I guess, if you like. So that was kind of my sort of step into the professional world. I always knew I wanted to dance, but I didn't really know if it was going to happen. So I was kind of stumbling through different jobs. I mean, I've always worked. I've got a very, very hard work ethic. I've always had that. So I had a paper round. I worked in the local ice cream shop. My first proper job was in a whiskey company, obviously. So I worked in a whiskey company. I got a job as the office junior in a very big, very busy accounts department. And I was there for 3 years, actually. And I used to make the coffee for the accountants, and used to do really boring jobs. And then I would go straight to my ice cream job straight after. And that was in between. And then every weekend was dancing, and any spare time I had was dancing. So yeah, that was my first definitely proper job is in the whiskey company.
And how did you graduate from there into dancing?
So yeah, the whiskey company was moving from Paisley to Glasgow, and if you didn't want to commute to Glasgow, you got a redundancy package. So it was really good timing, because I had just Brian Rogers down in Essex, which he was an absolute hero of mine. He's passed away now, bless him, but he was a really famous choreographer. So you have to audition to get in. I got a place at his college. I also got a scholarship because my mum and dad didn't have any money. And it just timed in lovely. And I remember sitting in my office and I did feel like a bird in a cage. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it now. I was still only 19. Things weren't really progressing quick enough for me in the semi-professional group. So yeah, I took the chance. I took the redundancy. I mean, it wasn't much because I was only there for 2.5 years, I think, but I took that and I took the opportunity to move to Essex and went to college. Now I didn't stay at college because, okay, I got a scholarship for my fees, but you forget that you've got to pay your rent, buy food, pay your bills. And this was me, 19, never had lived independently before, and completely underestimated how much it cost to sort of maintain a flat. So I actually left college, but from there I went to an audition in London, and that's where I got my first full-time professional job as a dancer at Butlins, and it was amazing. I would recommend everyone does at least one season at Butlins.
As a dancer or as anything at Butlins?
Anything really. I mean, I was a dancer, so the dancers did get a lot of privileges. I mean, we probably worked for an hour, a couple of hours a night at most, and that was it. We had no duties or anything. We were just dancers. And I also met some of my heroes like Cannon and Ball. Like, they were my heroes growing up, and they were one of the acts. So just every night was a Saturday night. I was only 20, so I was 20 and living my best life.
Sounds incredible. How did you find the opportunity at Butlins, and what was the audition process like?
So there's a newspaper called The Stage, which is still about just now, and actually we partner with The Stage, and that's where we offer all our scholarship places. So we give at least sort of £40,000 worth in scholarships every year in partnership with The Stage. It's also going back a little bit, when I left college, that was the reason I launched our own charity called the Future Fund. And it does exactly how I left college. It supports students with buying things like resources, etc. Okay, we can't pay for rent or anything like that, but we can help support them with buying resources and things they might need. But yeah, it's a Stage newspaper, and that's where the Spice Girls I
was thinking that. Is that how the Spice Girls all got their opportunities?
Definitely did see that advert. I didn't go to the audition, but I did see that advert.
Did you? Wow.
You had to, because I'm obviously a similar age to them, so you had to buy the Stage newspaper. It came out every Thursday. You had to subscribe to it or buy it. And that's where I seen the audition. I used to travel down to London. I would get the overnight bus from Glasgow. It would leave Glasgow at 11 a.m. and I would arrive in London at 7 a.m. because it was obviously the cheapest way to get there. And then straight to the audition. Often get kicked out after 5 minutes and then get the bus home. But this one, I actually got it. And we were grouped together. They were covering all of the Butlins at the time. So we were grouped together, and flung together this group of 6 that get shipped off to Ayr in Scotland, which was obviously not, it was kind of home for me. But the other girls, funnily enough, were all from London. But one of them, I struck up a real big friendship. And that's the girl that you've seen on top of Latrig last week. She's now our PA, and we met together as young dancers at Butlins.
Wow. So how many actual auditions did you go to on that overnight bus until you got the one at Butlins?
Oh, I don't know exactly how many, but a fair few. I remember there was one for Princess Cruises, a big cruise line, and they really needed very tall, very leggy dancers. I'm like 5'4", so I was never going to get it, but I went along anyway. And I remember they were at their desk and they were all scribbling with their heads down. I don't even think they lifted their heads up to look at me, to be honest. You had to do a double pirouette on each side, and then they just went next. So it's pretty brutal. I don't think it says brutal now, but it was pretty brutal back then. But do you know what? I wasn't upset. I think I've always had a wee bit of a thick skin. I just got on the bus and went, oh well, I'll try the next one. But yeah, I went to a few. I wouldn't say that many, to be honest. I don't know whether I just got lucky or I was just determined, but yeah, I went to a few, and then I got my job at Butlins, and then from there I kind of just was never out of work. I did pantomimes in Scotland. I went back to Butlins to do another season. I did the London Palladium. I was obviously the Millennium Dome, which is now known as the O2 Arena, because as well, or I was a gymnast. In 1999, we were training to do trapeze for the Millennium Show for the Queen. So that was an amazing experience. I did a world cruise, so I travelled around the world, seeing some amazing countries I would never see. Like, we went through the Panama Canal, we went to Fiji, Acapulco, and you're thinking, I'm dancing, seeing all these amazing countries, and I'm also getting paid for it. Like, someone pinch me, this is not real. So yeah, I just went from job to job to job to job, which took me until 27, which was when Razzamataz was born.
Wow. So of all of those roles and all of those jobs that you went through, do you have a favourite that you look back and you think, if I could do it all again, I would love to do that again?
Do you know, probably Butlins. It wasn't my most glamorous job, but I think, again, I made lifelong friends and I just had so much fun. It was that decade of my life that I had zero responsibilities. I was always very determined that I wasn't even going to buy a car, because I didn't want finance. I didn't want anything to tie me down to anything. Didn't have a boyfriend, didn't have finance, didn't have a mortgage. I wanted to be a real free spirit. World cruise, don't get me wrong, that was amazing because I seen so many countries, but I wouldn't say I was at my happiest, because I was isolated and I was away from family, and I had just lost my dad that year, actually. So I wouldn't say that was my happiest experience, but that was an amazing experience. I'd probably say Butlins, to be honest, was the best time.
It's amazing, isn't it, when you think back to all of these different opportunities and things that you've done, and sometimes the ones that seem the most glamorous, not all that glitters is gold, is it?
Definitely. I felt quite lonely on the ship and a bit quite isolated.
And was that just because there wasn't many dancers, or is it because you were away from home, or what was the?
It was a small cast anyway, and most of them were Norwegian. So like, there was a communication barrier, because sometimes we just had, it was just a different culture as well. There was only one English girl with me. So yeah, it wasn't. But I think I felt a bit trapped, if I'm being honest. You know what I just said about The Office? I felt like a bird in a cage, and then on this ship, I felt trapped. I couldn't get off this ship. I think I've always naturally been this sort of free spirit, and I don't like the thought of, because on the ship you were at sea for a week and you couldn't see land, you just seen water for a week. So it made you feel quite small, actually. I'd also, as I said, I did a month around the Med, and then I went back on the ship for Christmas, and it was the first Christmas without my dad. We'd lost my dad in the January, and I knew that my mum, just so happened my other siblings all had things to do, so I knew my mum was going to be on her own. So yeah, wasn't the best timing, I guess. I kind of wanted to be at home with the first year without my dad.
Yeah, and it just got in the way almost, but it sounded still like an amazing experience.
It was. I mean, I'm very blessed, very lucky. The amount of countries I've seen was, because it wasn't just to Spain and back or anything, it was a world cruise. So I was so lucky to be on there.
And how does that work in terms of dances and performances? Are you doing different shows every night, every week? Does it change? Are you rehearsing? What's the kind of structure in something like that?
Yeah, so we did a 5-week rehearsal period down in Sussex, and we were put up in this, I just remember being in this lady's house. They must have paid her rent for us to be there. And the rehearsals were brutal. Like, they were 8:30 in the morning till like 9:30 at night. And the choreographer was, I mean, he was amazing, but obviously it was a really, really high standard. When we got on the ship, because it was a world cruise, there was some people on the ship for like a month, or maybe even 2-3 months. So you could not possibly do a different show every night. It just wasn't possible. So we had a bank. I think we maybe had a bank of 10 pieces. So there was nights where we weren't performing at all. And obviously there was nights where we went through a force 10 storm. Now that was pretty scary, I'll be honest. We were told to go back to our rooms immediately, and the officers came in and bolted the windows down. It was really scary, to be honest. I wasn't even sure if we were going to make it back to land. So there was nights where the show would be cancelled if the sort of, depending on the force of the storm you were going through.
Oh, wow. So you really took your life into your own hands going on to this cruise.
Kind of, yeah.
Or it felt like it. And then you said at age 27, Razzamataz was born. So what happened between the cruise and Razzamataz being born, and how did that all come to fruition?
Yeah, so I was working at Centre Parks as well, which was Oasis back in my in Penrith, and I was also going up and down to London to do the trapeze. And I think obviously at 25, which sounds crazy, I was getting a bit old already. It's a bit like a footballer, a dancer's life is quite short, and I obviously started my journey at 19, so a lot of the dancers were coming in at 19. Plus, I'd also ticked all my boxes. Like a world cruise was something on my bucket list, if you like. Mm-hmm. And I had achieved that. I had done pantomimes, I had done summer seasons, I'd done stints in Italy, I'd done the Millennium Dome, I'd done West End. So I was kind of like, right, tick, 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 what next? And I guess I knew I wanted, I had rented so many accommodation. I must have had at least 50 different houses by the time I was 25. And, I guess you get to a point where you want a wee bit of stability and you start thinking about your future. And I knew I didn't want a dance school, which maybe does, I never really thought about it until I spoke to you today, maybe does spring back to that experience that I had, that I just remember it being really strict and kind of not a nice experience. So I wanted something a bit more relaxed. I had also nearly got into Starlight Express and Fame, the West End musicals, because I'm obviously a gymnast as well. And I don't know if you've seen those shows, but you have to do a lot of acrobatics. So I obviously got through the dance and acro part of the audition, but then when it came to drama and singing, I kind of crumbled because I had no idea what to do, and I had no idea. I didn't have enough confidence to even blag it. Because when I was younger, the dancers danced, the singers sung, and that was it. But it was all changing, and it wasn't enough just to dance. You had to be able to hold a backing vocal. You had to be able to, do a couple of lines if you got a part. So it was what we call in our industry a triple threat. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to do a little bit of everything. And that's kind of where the inspiration for Razzamataz was born, and also just giving back. Like, I know how much it changed little shy Denise at this little Catholic primary school, who's now performing on stage and running a national brand. Like, some of my school friends who I've not seen for years, like, they would not believe what I was doing right now. I would not believe it. They'd be like, what? She was really shy at school. So just knowing the power of the arts and, the confidence it can give young people, and how it can really literally, be life-changing.
Change their lives.
Yeah.
So how did Razzamataz start? What can you remember the day where you thought, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to register this company, or I'm going to set up this group? Or how did it evolve from an idea of, I want a school that's not a horrible experience, to what it is now? What's that journey been like?
Yeah, I had taught for someone, and then I'd looked at the sort of what was out there for young people at the minute. And yeah, I remember my first day at Razzamataz clearly, and I was a full-time dancer and choreographer at Centre Parks at the time, Oasis. I was also a fitness instructor as well. And I thought, right, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to start a little Saturday morning class. And that's exactly what I did. It was in the Penrith Players Theatre. It was September 2000, so 22 years ago now. And because I was at Oasis and all my friends were all performers, they all became my teachers. So I had my staff all ready-made. And I literally, it's so funny because you wouldn't get away with it now, but I literally hand-writ a few flyers and posters and I think I photocopied a few things, put them up on a few post offices and things. And yeah, I remember I was so nervous on the first day. I clearly remember my knees literally knocking together under the table as parents were signing their children in, because I was so nervous. And it was really busy. And yeah, I just loved it. I just got such a buzz from what we were offering young people and giving back to the community. And yeah, there was no turning back after that.
How did that develop? So after that first day of being so nervous and then people actually turn in, what happened next? What was the next step?
So I loved it so much. I've seen what joy we were giving to young people, the same joy that I got. And there wasn't the whole stress with exams, and it was just relaxed. It was fun. And like, as I say, my friends today are my friends that I met at that dance school. So I did it on the Sunday. As I say, I was still actually full-time at Oasis and a fitness instructor. But I realised that this, like, it was over and done with in one day, whereas I used to dance like every day at one point. So I then thought, well, why don't I try, this is only one day, I'm going to have to leave Oasis at some point. Why don't I replicate this somewhere else? So my next move was to take it to Carlisle, and I took it to the Sand Centre at Carlisle. And again, there was lots of dance schools in Carlisle, but there was no one offering the triple threat. So that was huge. And then it just kind of evolved from there, because I knew that there was 7 days in the week. So I knew that I could do this at least 7 times. So I went to Dumfries on a Monday night and seen the same success. I went to West Cumbria on a Tuesday. I went to Glasgow on a Wednesday. I went to Paisley on a Thursday. Now, bear in mind, Paisley is like 200 miles away. Then we'd drive back to Cumbria on a Friday, do all my admin, and that was the days where you were actually getting post. Like, I used to not be able to open my door because everything's online now, isn't it? But I used to post out a prospectus, and the parent would have to post me it back. So I would literally not be able to get my door open as I came back on the Friday. Did all my admin on the Friday. I was still a fitness instructor as well, by the way. And then on a Saturday morning, I used to pick up my team and go to Kendal, and I had a school in Kendal on a Saturday morning. Then I would drive my team back to Carlisle on a Saturday, and I would do a school on a Saturday afternoon. And then I had a school on Sunday in Keswick. And then I was like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now what do I do? I've run out of days of the week. And that's when I started looking at franchising the business.
So how did you grow that business? Did you have experience? Did you find help? Did you have people to help you? How did that all come about?
Well, I had, obviously, because I was working at Oasis, so I had that network of performers. So that was my first sort of lot of teachers. But then obviously they couldn't come to Paisley on a Thursday night because they were dancing at Centre Parks. So then I started looking at colleges, and I'm a big fan of the University of Life, and giving people a chance and giving them an opportunity. Just because you don't have a degree or you haven't done X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that you're not trainable and you're not going to be great and dynamic. So I then I used to get all my teachers through the local colleges, and you have your own sort of inner network anyway, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
That way. I didn't really have any business experience. I've always been a sort of secret entrepreneur, if you like. I remember doing my first cake and garage sale when I was like 9. And I went round again with all my neighbours and put little flyers through their door and collected old LPs that they wanted to sell. And I raised money for Ethiopia back way 40 years ago. So I guess I've always had that spirit. And again, I just love working. I absolutely loved being at Razzamataz. I used to like buzz from it. So I also had a little bit of support from the Prince's Trust. I can't remember how I stumbled across them, but I did, and I got my first business mentor. And I can't remember his name, and I feel so bad about it because I remember him so well. And as much, he always said to me, as much as you love what you do, Denise, as a business, and don't forget that, and cash is king, and don't let yourself get into too much sort of where your credit. And that's actually resonated with me so much because my dad lost his business. He had a butcher's business, and in the recession, crikey, in the 70s, was it, or 60s even, he was letting all his customers put it on the slate. That's what they did years ago, wasn't it? Put it on the slate. But then his prices, his suppliers' prices went up, and then nobody came back to pay their slate. So he went bankrupt. So it is important, as much as it's a passion, it's creative. I'm so blessed. I do what I do, and I'm still in an industry that I love. It is a business, and it is important that, you know, you treat it as a business. So he was amazing. I got a lot of support from Prince's Trust, and he put me up for my first award, actually, which I think I came second. It was in Cumbria. It was the Prince's Trust Young Business of the Year award. Yeah, and that just spurred me on even more. It gave me more confidence. I contacted Business Gateway up in Scotland, and I got a little bit of support. I think I got a grant for a computer at the time from them. So yeah, I've definitely had support, and I would always recommend you reach out to people like yourself as well. Obviously, the Cumbria Chamber, your local Chamber of Commerce. There's so much help out there, and people really want to help you. People love success. They love it, and they love being a part of that journey. So anyone listening, I would say just reach out and ask people for help, because there is so much of it out there.
Absolutely. I think half the time you don't know what you don't know, and just getting in touch with someone and finding out what help is available to you can make a massive difference to your business, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
And then you talked about you ran out of days of the week. You probably ran out of time to sleep as well, by the sounds of it. And then you went franchising.
Yeah, well, I obviously, a lot of my teachers were expressing an interest in doing this, and a lot of them weren't from Cumbria, so they were all relocating home. I knew that there was a competitor doing it, so I researched, I looked into it, and I thought, well, maybe this is right for my business. Again, it was never about money. Like, growing the business, hand on heart, it was never about money in the early days. It was very much about, like, love this, I just love it, and how can I do more? Like, I just love working as well. I've always been like that. So I thought franchising was probably a good route for me, because my teachers were saying, look, I'm moving back to Derby, I'm moving to Edinburgh, you know, I'd love to do this, can you help me? And the best way to sort of replicate that was via franchising. So I did take a bit of a risk, because I remortgaged my flat at the time, because obviously you need funds to do it. If ever I'm going to do something, I'll do it properly, or I won't do it at all. So I joined the BFA, which is the British Franchise Association, to get help and support and advice from them, and to follow ethical franchising. Because franchising a long time ago had a wee bit of a bad reputation, but it was a heartbeat in a wallet. You know, when you're in, it's really not that at all. You have to be passionate about your business, because they say that, don't you? The passion is first, the money will come after. Don't worry about that. You really have to. Running your own business is hard. It's really hard. And if you go into it just for money, you're going into it for the wrong reasons, and you'll end probably very disappointed. But yeah, that was sort of my route. I engaged a franchise solicitor, who is still my solicitor today, to write my franchise agreement, and I engaged a consultant to write my operations manual. And we sold Derby quite quickly, because she was relocating, and we sold then Edinburgh, and then came the Dragon's Den appearance afterwards. So no doubt you're going to ask me about that.
Yes, absolutely. So you'd done Derby, you'd done Edinburgh, you'd now started a franchise, you'd remortgaged your flat. And then how did Dragon's Den come about? Was that on the stage as well?
Well, no, it wasn't actually. I used to remember it was a Tuesday night after my West Cumbria school, and I think it was on a Tuesday night on BBC 2 years ago, because it was quite a new programme. I was only on series 2, I think. I can't remember, but it was quite fresh. So I used to watch it, and I had an idea for a game. It wasn't Razzamataz. I had an idea for a performing arts game. So that's actually what I applied with. My application form, and they said, well, have you got a prototype for this? And I said, no, I've not got that far. And they were really wanting people to show. So they said, well, you've already got this business. We've looked at your website. We want you to Razzamataz. And at first I was like, no, because it's my baby, and I don't want people to think that this was just about money, because that's not what my drive was.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought about it, and I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I've got a great business and we do so much good work for communities, and I already set up the charity by then. Well, I guess the worst that's going to happen is we'll get a bit of PR from it. And I didn't have that much time to think, so I had a screen test in Manchester, and yeah, nervous, come close. But I did it, and then they said, right, we want you to film. And again, I think they were like 2 weeks, we've got a slot, we want you in London filming in 2 weeks. And so then I had to get because I took the 4 kids on, didn't I? And I think that was the first time anyone had taken children onto the programme. So we quickly put a song together. We were actually rehearsing a couple, but because we were worried about copyright, we decided just to do the little jingle. I had done a competition to write a Razzamataz jingle. We, Owen Paisley, had wrote it, and we still use that jingle today. So we thought that was the safest thing to do, because it was fun as well, and that's what we're about, fun, not too serious. And it was, we had wrote it, so we couldn't get into trouble for copyright. So then we appeared on that, and Duncan obviously invested.
Yeah, and Duncan Bannatyne and Bannatyne's gyms and everything, they're a huge franchise, aren't they? Or they're a big business, big network.
No, they're not a franchise. There's a lot, there's a lot of brands that are franchises that you would not believe are franchises, but his isn't. His are all managed. They're not franchised. But he has chains of things. And that's what I was researching the dragons before I went on. I thought, if anyone's going to invest, it'll be Duncan. Not because we're both Scottish, but I knew chains of things. Like he actually didn't start his business journey till he was in his 30s, and he started off with ice cream vans, and he was actually caught up in the Glasgow ice cream wars, where people were literally getting shot if you were on their patch. Then he moved into nursing homes, and I think he timed it with this big government initiative that he benefited from, and then he went into, I might have not got the order right, but I know he definitely did nursing as well. He did his chains of gyms, and now he's got hotels and casinos. But as far as I'm aware, unless it's changed, he never actually franchised. They were always managed. But yes, he did have chains of services, so there were similarities, and did.
And how nervous were you when you were going in to do that filming? Were you more nervous the first day of Razzamataz when your knees were knocking together under the table, or were you more nervous doing Dragon's Den?
Oh, definitely Dragon's Den. I physically vomited. I've got 2 children, and I had 2 terrible births, and I had 2 C-sections, and I always joke that I think I would rather have a C-section than do that again. But I think my blessing was having the 4 kids, because they were like buzzing. Oh my God, TV. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be sick.
Terrified.
And I was all right, because I didn't want to make them nervous. So obviously, I didn't do any of that in front of them. I wanted it to be a great experience for them, and it was. They were absolutely buzzing. But yeah, it's definitely the most I've stepped out of my comfort zone ever, and probably ever in my entire life. And yeah, the most terrifying.
So Duncan invested. Yeah. How did that help shape Razzamataz into what it is now?
I mean, first of all, the PR, you cannot buy that kind of PR. You were just sort of catapulted into the limelight. The very next day, I got contacted by TUI, the travel company, to say, in your pitch, and Duncan invested. We've actually been looking for the service at our overseas camps, and we want to talk to you. So me and Duncan went to a meeting with TUI, and then straight away we were partnered up with this huge international brand. And we secured that contract for the next 10 years. Obviously, again, people were contacting us because they'd seen us on Dragon's Den. So it really did accelerate our growth. Duncan himself, I remember first sending him an email, and you're like, oh, send, and like, oh, not, because he gave me his email address. He does that in all these clubs actually, and I thought, well, he'll not reply. It'll be his PA that replies, or if he does reply, he'll reply in like 2 months. immediately replied straight away. I mean, only one line responses, but he was always very supportive and proactive and helping you and listening to you. Put me in touch with then like financial advisors and, you know, just like his network. He's a very busy man. We weren't having meetings every day or anything like that.
No.
But yeah, it definitely helped us to secure, like we work with, I mean, this year alone, we promoted the Sing 2 DVD release. So we're still to this day working with massive brands that actually they approach us. We don't chase them.
Yeah.
That was now 16 years ago I appeared on Dragon's Den. So it just shows the power of media.
Absolutely. And like you say, you can't buy that sort of PR, can you?
Oh, absolutely not.
And then how did that develop? Is Duncan still an investor? Did you take the business back? How did Razzamataz get to where it is now?
I mean, Duncan was great, and you know, we appear in all of his books as one of his top investments. Duncan is a closet performer, you see. He went off to, if you've read any of his books, he went off to America to drama school, and he studied acting, and he's had a few bit parts in a few movies and things. Plus, he's a big advocate of supporting children's charities, which, you know, again was a synergy with us because that's what we do. But Duncan's a very busy man, you know, and after 7 years, I felt it was time for me to buy my shares back. I felt it was time for him. I mean, he travels the world now. So I just wanted to buy my shares back. He was absolutely delighted with the return on his investment. He was absolutely delighted to move on. These investors don't stay in it for life. They don't stay in it for, in fact, 7 years is actually a very long time to stay invested in a company, because there is, as a shareholder, there is expectations from the director of how much are you going to get involved. You know, now I have to then sort of plan the future of the business and drive the business forward. So yeah, I bought the shares back, and yeah, Duncan's still very complimentary of the business today, but I know he's living his best life, and why not? Why not? He travels the world.
Yeah, great. And where is Razzamataz now?
So we are nearly 60 territories, and I always wanted steady growth. Like, you know, if I was at 200-300 franchises, I wouldn't have wanted that kind of growth, because first of all, let's not forget that I've had 2 children in that period. In fact, I found out I was expecting my first the day I was filming Dragon's Den. So it wasn't nerves, I was actually pregnant and I didn't even realise. So that was maybe the whole vomit thing as well. So yeah, I'd had, you know, I always referred to the Razzamataz kids as my kids, because I wasn't sure if I was going to have children. I wasn't even sure if I wanted them. But then, sod's law, when I did decide I wanted them, it was a very difficult journey for me. I've had 3 baby losses. I've had 2 rounds of IVF, 2 rounds of ICSI, several miscarriages. So having those 2 kids didn't come easy to me. So I had that journey whilst I was building the business. And having a franchise partner, you need to be invested in them as much as they're invested in you, and they have to trust you. You have to be there to guide them and support them. And I would never have wanted to take on too much that A, I suffered, or my child suffered, and B, their business wasn't a success. You know, you don't come on board unless both of you have full, you know, commitment to making this a success. So we actually don't take everyone that applies for a franchise. We're very selective. Like, you don't just automatically get a bank. That's not how it works. So yeah, we've won many awards. Proud to say I've lost count of how many awards we've won. But we won Franchisor of the Year last year, and that was by Barclays Bank. This year we're up for Lifestyle Franchisor of the Year with the BFA and HSBC. Now that is known as the Oscars of the franchising world. They don't get any bigger than that. So the final is in November, and I'm actually really proud. I've got a franchisee in the final too. She's in the Lifestyle Franchisee of the Year. Asha, who's our Penrith and South Lakes franchisee. So we're all going down together, and we've actually had a franchisee that has won that award before in 2018. We're launching we've got a massive big team day at Pineapple Studios in London in November too. We want to celebrate our teams. You know, we've had 2 years of isolation, so we're bringing them together. We've got an amazing agenda, like Kerry Ellis. If you like musical theatre, you'll know who Kerry Ellis is. She's coming to do vocal health. We've got a coach coming to do a wellness section, because it's really important that we're supporting our franchisees and our teachers with their mental health and not just our students. So it's a jam-packed agenda. Then we sold out 2 West End shows in literally a day. So in December, I'm going to the Royal Variety Show for my 50th, which is a nice little birthday treat. And then we've got a big West End show at the Shaftesbury Theatre in December, and then we've got another one in February. Yeah, Crumbs, just so much going on. Oh yeah, and we're launching our new teacher training platform. So we're a big believer in, obviously, again, investing in our teams and how training works. And it's difficult to get to training sometimes. So this is an online platform, and you actually get your own teaching diploma at the end of it. So it's just going to raise the standards, making sure that, you know, we're supporting our principals with their inductions and trainings. And one day those teachers might become our franchisees. So yeah, next 5 to 10 years is just continuing to do what we do. And I'm so blessed. I've got such a brilliant team. I know everyone says that, but I really do have such a loyal team. Most of my team have been with me from day one, like my head office, my inner circle at my head office. You know, Charlotte, who's my right-hand lady, she was a franchisee. Well, she was a dance teacher for me initially, and then a franchisee for I think 13 years, but she's been with the company for, I think this is her 17th year. And considering we've been going 22 years, you know, it's basically, you know, almost from day one. So I know a lot of our team are like that. They've all been with me from almost day one. So yeah, I never ever stop getting excited about Razzamataz. And I think the day you stop getting excited, it's maybe time to move on.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can tell. So there's no slowing down for you then?
No.
No. And if you had to distill down your business ethos into one phrase, what would it be?
Definitely giving the gift of confidence. And that comes in all areas of the journey at Razzamataz, whether that's the gift of confidence in our students and seeing the transformation in them, or the gift of confidence to maybe one of our oldest franchisees in their 70s, our youngest franchisees in their 20s, who maybe, you know, fresh out of college and didn't think that they could run a business. And actually you can. Someone in their 70s maybe think, I'm too old to run a business. No, you're not. Not if you want it. If you're you know, you've got a passion for it, you're not. So definitely giving the gift of confidence would sum it up. That's what we've been all about. That was the passion and what ignited my passion to even start this in the first place, because of the confidence performing arts gave me. Mm-hmm. And leaving that legacy of that.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you've got people that are with you from the very beginning, and you don't take everyone that applies to be a franchisee. What are 3 non-negotiable behaviours of people that work with you?
Definitely a people person, because obviously, you know, you're not just teaching students, you're working with the families. You know, you're working with mum, dad, guardian, carer. You see, you've got to build up relationships with your families, who are your customers. And then you might have a team, you'll have a minimum of 3 employees. And some of our schools have 20 employees. So good organizational skills, again, being able to communicate effectively with your teams, great communication skills, because you will be organizing events like nobody's business, because you'll have watching weeks, you'll have shows, you'll have PTA fairs and fetes. So a great people person, great organizational skills, and great communication skills. Again, they kind of all go hand in hand, I suppose, but the top one is definitely being a people person. It's not, again, you really don't have to have been a West End performer to run this business. It's an added bonus, and you also don't have to have run a business either, because that's why you're coming to us. But it's having those sort of transferable skills, and that I think you could run any franchise if you've got those skills, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your opinion, what is your superpower?
Oh, That's a good question. What is my superpower? I think being bold, not being scared, just take yourself out your comfort zone, and yeah, being bold, I guess, being brave and bold, as in Braveheart.
Yeah, with blue down the face.
Roots are there.
What is the most common misconception of you, and what would you say to set it straight?
Oh, another good question. I guess maybe I'm not the most confident person in the room, or the loudest person in the room, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to get to know you. And you know, I'm this year, I'm still a student, and I think, again, when you think that you can't learn, it's time to hang up your shoes. So I'm still a student. I'm still learning, you know, myself. I love working with coaches and life coaches, and you know, to learn myself. So yeah, probably that, actually.
Mm-hmm. And what would you tell your teenage self?
Oh, my teenage self. Just keep believing in yourself, I think. Mm-hmm. Just believe in yourself. Never give in. I do believe that, you know, good things come to those who wait, and working really hard, always having that real hard work ethic. But yeah, just believe in yourself, because I think if you're talking like 13, I do remember being in high school and feeling quite lonely, but weirdly inwardly confident, but not outwardly confident. And a lot of performers are actually introverts. That's a thing in the performing arts world, but we love performing, so it's kind of weird. It's kind of backwards, but yeah, just keep believing in yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If there was a movie that was to be made about your life, what would it be called, and which actor or actress would play you?
Oh, you're pulling some good ones out of the bag, Eve. Do you know, I think it would be called Cheese. Because other than the whole gift of confidence, I remember someone saying to me, like, what kind of drives you? And I was like, do you know what? Like, we could never afford cheese in my house. Like, you know, I remember going to school with big, massive holes in my shoe. And I remember when the milk got halfway down, my mum would fill it up with water so that it would last the week. Mm-hmm. But we never had cheese, never. So I guess that's kind of drove me to make sure I could always afford to buy cheese. Mm-hmm. But listen, simple things are what can motivate us. I wasn't striving to have, like, my son's like, oh, a Lamborghini. I'm like, no, I just wanted to be able to afford a block of cheese. That's all. Just the simple mm-hmm. things.
I love cheese, so I echo that sentiment.
Oh, I'm a cheese fan. Although I'm kind of lactose intolerant, so it's kind of not my best friend.
It doesn't matter. Power through.
Who would play me? Now, my hero growing up, and I knew this was going to happen, I've forgotten her name now, in Dirty Dancing. Do you know, this podcast will stop and I'll remember who she is. I've not got my Google it. Cynthia Rhodes. If anyone has watched dance movies, you will know who Cynthia Rhodes mm-hmm. is. She was my hero growing up. She was in Saturday Night Fever, Flashdance, Dirty Dancing, and yeah, she's just amazing.
Amazing. So it would be Cynthia Rhodes starring in Cheese.
How fun is that?
That sounds like a good film, though, to be fair. I'd definitely watch it. Okay, so the next questions are some quick fire questions, and we're going to do this or that. So just answer the first one that comes into your head.
Right.
Okay. Phone or text?
Text.
Email or meeting?
Email.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Beach holiday or skiing holiday?
Beach.
Dogs or cats?
Neither. No, I'm only joking. I've got a rabbit. Does that count?
You can have a rabbit. Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Cheese.
Cheese.
Finally, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh, absolutely not. Definitely not.
Do you know what? That's the most polarizing question of the entire podcast series.
Yeah, that's just every level.
Now, every guest leaves a question for the next guest. You don't get to know who it is, and you don't get to know who I'm interviewing next, but everyone leaves a question. So the question that's been left for you is, have you ever worked with a leadership coach? And if so, what was the biggest benefit?
Yes, I have. Several, actually. The big benefit, I think, is just, I know it sounds cheese, but thinking outside the box, and someone taking you down a road, a path that you hadn't really thought of, that just ignites an idea in you.
Mm-hmm.
And just, again, motivates you. It's something either you hadn't thought about, or you'd thought about it, but you were sitting on it for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that would be the answer. Yeah, just to ignited a new, fresh idea, because I'm all about evolving the company. Again, I think when you don't want to evolve and you're not inspired and you're not motivated, you should walk away at that point. Like, I'm always evolving and thinking of the next thing for Razzamataz and for our network.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Denise, is there anything else you would like to say to anyone listening, or any last thoughts?
Just thank you, and just believe in yourself and go for it, because life is short and you only get one stab at it. So just go for it. Don't let anything or anyone hold you back.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Denise. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Eve. Thank you.